Welcome back to the Grease Goblins Rereads channel. Today's video, we're going to be hitting Theon 3, A Clash of Kings. Again, following suit on these shorter chapters that we're kind of getting into in the middle of A Clash of Kings, which I find so interesting. Really starting out this series, a lot of the chapters were actually, a lot longer than a Game of Thrones. But as you get into the middle of A Clash of Kings, some of these chapters start to get a bit smaller. And you're going to see that with this one and also the next one. Arya 8 specifically is a very short one, but let's not waste any time. Let's get into Theon 3, which has been foreshadowed by the last Bran chapter. As we get into page 404, we're in the aftermath of a more or less a battle, more or less a slaughter, I guess I would actually say. That's what Theon himself thinks of. But we see Benfred Tallheart captured and beaten as he hurls insults at Theon, calling him a turncloak and threatening that Robb will kill him and feed his heart to his wolf. Again, Theon is somebody that is very much known to the North. He's been a ward of them for a long time, especially of the Starks, and especially the Tallhearts, who were very close to the Starks, right? But you go even further, Benfred Tallheart is actually of an age with Theon. We don't know how old Benfred is, but it's anywhere, it seems like, from like the 20 to 30 range. Theon himself being a young adult, they would have been of an age. And so that's something that's instantly going to come to mind for Theon, is that Theon is going to have to kill people, or at least that's what he believes he has to do, that he might have grown up knowing. And so that's the issue, right? And Theon tries to give all these people ways out of living and not having to kill them, but as we see here, it's not going to go well, because Benfred isn't just rolling over, he's throwing insults and threats at Theon. Aeron then declares that Benfred must be executed for spitting on Theon, which he says is a blasphemy against all of them and their god. Remember, if you think about the way the Greyjoy rule is, it's more or less built on strength and fear of them, right? And so when you're having people calling out you and basically looking down on you, spitting on you, it shows weakness. And so Theon is at a crossroads for two different things. One, the Ironborn culture is all about strength. It's about your fighting and sailing ability. So that is being called into question already because of Benfred's insults. And two, you also have the fact that these men don't believe in Theon. Theon is somebody that was given command by Balon, but Theon has not been in the Iron Islands. Nobody respects him. That's what everything has been building up to for Theon's plotline in Theon 1 and Theon 2, where we see him at the Iron Islands. Nobody really cares about him. He hasn't earned their respect, and that's very important here in the Iron Islands. And so, in a lot of ways, Theon is kind of screwed. He knows he has to execute this person, but he doesn't really want to. Theon insists he needs to question Benfred first, but Benfred defiantly says Theon will get no answers. It's Theon's last-ditch attempt of trying to save Benfred, not having to execute him. But here, Benfred spits it away and would rather die honorably, which... And again, you have to praise Benfred and his steadfast loyalty to the Starks. He could easily just, say all these things to get out of dying, but he doesn't. He stands on his own 2 feet. And so at this point, with Theon, you might want information from Benfred, but he's not cooperating, and it looks bad if you keep him alive. And so Aeron pushes harder on Theon that Theon must act decisively and kill him. Theon is aware that while he technically commands, he isn't really in command. They're following him more because of Aeron and people like Dagmar Cleftjaw. So at this point, Theon kind of is forced into a corner. Benfred curses both Theon and the Drowned God, sealing his fate. Theon, seeing there's no saving him now, tells Stig to silence Benfred, knowing he's condemned him to die. It's not something that Theon wants to do. Remember, Theon, when he was with Robb, the war seemed kind of like this great tale, almost similar to someone like Sansa, for instance. And it was all about this honorable thing, trying to get to Ned, all of those types of things. And here, they're slaughtering people that Theon knows. And they're doing it not honorably at all. Surprise attacks and him betraying the Starks. As we're getting into page 405, Benfred is forced to his knees. Werlag gags him with his rabbit skin belt, while Stig prepares to execute him with an axe. And this gets an interruption. Aeron doesn't like this at all. We know Aeron is this very religious person. He's, in my opinion, like a fanatic. And we see how that plays out in A Feast for Crows. And even the Winds of Winter sample chapter that we get with him, he is somebody that's going to go for the religious part. And that's why so many people fear him, right? That being this prophet, and he has such a connection to the drowned god, he insists that Benfred must be drowned, given to the god in the old way. And this is going to give Theon even more pause, because not only does Theon have to kill Benfred, he's going to have to get dirty, right? It's a whole different side of things, of Theon having somebody be executed by other people. It's not Theon having to do it. It's Theon just get it done, and I don't want to have to see it really. Here, it's taking that even further. But if you want to think about Theon as an individual, he hasn't taken Ned Stark's lessons. Ned Stark's lesson is, if you are going to be the person condemning someone to die, you should be the one to do it. And the reason that's so important is because it makes you kill that person, right? You have to look that person in the eye, hear all of whatever they're going to say, and decide that they need to die. Theon's not doing that. Theon's kind of taking the coward way out, having somebody else, execute this person. It allows for people to be executed more and more if you're just having other people do it, because it's not your direct action. And here it's even worse, because Aeron is asking Theon to drown another man. You are physically putting your hands on somebody, you're forcing them into the water. It's not a quick process. It's not like one slash and your head is gone, for instance. You're basically choking the life out of somebody. It is a very personal process. Theon being uninterested in this ritual because we know he doesn't really care about the religion of the Ironborn, another thing that separates him from their culture. He tries to dismiss it as pointless, since dead is dead in his mind, but Aeron demands Theon participate as the commander. Theon then refuses, asserting that battles are his domain, and tells Aeron to handle the god's work himself. So Theon does get out of it, but Aeron in a similar way is really preaching what Ned preached. You should be the one to kill this person. You are the one condemning them to die, that you should be the one to do it. Aeron gives Theon a disappointed look, but proceeds to take Benfred to the beach to drown him in salt water as custom dictates. Aeron is seeing that Theon is not somebody that is really religious. And for somebody that's deeply religious like Aeron, he's going to look at Theon as just some guy that's still, a Northman, right? It's the reason that Aeron pushes so heavily for Victarion, because Victarion in Aeron's eyes is somebody that is part of the drowned god religion. Theon tries to tell himself that it might be a mercy. Stig is a poor executioner, and Benfred had a thick neck. But in reality, it's not a mercy at all. It's Theon trying to rationalize the actions he's taking. And regardless of what you want to think about, Theon reminds me of a soldier that you could see in World War II or any of these other places where you're being commanded to do horrible things, or you're a commander and you're having to do something that you don't want to do. It's the rationalization. How do you believe in your heart that you're still a good person when you're commanding people to drown someone? Drowning, in my opinion, is one of the worst ways that you could go out. Like, for me as a fear, one of the worst ways to go out would either be being set on fire or drowning. So Theon's trying to rationalize it, but in reality, it's still horrible action. He recalls mocking Benfred years ago when they spent time together during a visit to Torrhen Square with Eddard Stark. It again is going to relate to that personal feeling that Theon feels he's betraying everything that he's known. And nearby, Theon hears sounds of looting and slaughter. The fight had been no real battle, just butchering armored men like sheep. And that's one of the big points, is that now that the North has kind of gone south, most of the fighting men, the best men, are not really in the North anymore. You're going to see a lot of this. People that are just thrust into being a knight and all of these different things, wearing mail when they've never really worn it before. That's what happened here. And that's what Theon's saying, right? So Theon, in my opinion, it's kind of the opposite. You're not fighting the best warriors of this place. You're fighting people that are farmers. Maybe they're masons. They're whatever. And that's why Theon has such a bitter taste. Because you're betraying everything you know, and also you're doing it in probably the most dishonorable way possible. But it also paints the horrors of war, right? People being looted after you just killed them all. And it's just horrible to think about. From a height, Theon watches the aftermath, wounded horses being tended to or put down, and dead bodies being stripped for valuables. One Ironborn, a Harlaw, saws a ring from a corpse's finger, paying the iron price as their custom demands. Think about a custom where the only time you can get jewelry or things of pleasantries is killing another person. That culture is just wrong. The Ironborn, it's the reason so many people hate the Ironborn culture, and especially in A Song of Ice and Fire, is based upon this. And that's why I think Asha, when she eventually takes over the rulership of the Ironborn, hopefully she'll be a bit more progressive, but we'll just have to see. Theon considers looting the men he killed himself, but is repulsed. He recalls what Ned Stark would have said, and the thought makes him angry, and he reminds himself Stark is dead and no longer matters. Theon is trying to rationalize that he's not a Stark, that he didn't grow up learning the values of the Starks. And if Ned Stark was here, regardless of what Theon wants to say, that Ned Stark doesn't matter, that the Starks don't matter to him, the only reason that he's being held back from being an Ironborn is, well, one, the Ironborn treat him like shit, and two, because the Stark values are in Theon, he just tries to suppress them, and he's trying to do all these things that he is not. Theon is trying to act like Victarion, for instance, when Theon just is not Victarion. He just isn't. And that's not a bad thing either. Fish Whiskers Boltley oversees his loot, while his sons add to it. Nearby, the drunken Todrick stumbles around wearing a blood-stained white fox fur cloak, swinging an axe and drinking ale, more ale drunk than blood drunk. And this is something I should also tell you. The Ironborn are so much better than these forces that have been left behind that even being drunk, it doesn't phase them, right? It doesn't get them killed. It's just another reminder for Theon of the competition that they're facing and how dishonorable this whole thing is. As we get into page 406, Theon tells Wex to fetch his bow and quiver. As Todrick drunkenly attacks one of Botley's sons, Theon prepares to shoot, only trying to do a warning shot and just kind of spook them, put them back into place. A mistake happens. Aiming for Todrick's hand, holding the horn, Theon instead hits him in the belly when the man stumbles, as Theon kills him. It's another action where Theon was just trying to make a point. He was kind of joking around, not taking things seriously. And what does he do? He misses and ends up killing a man. It just shows you how Theon is. Whereas Theon does have those Stark values in him, he also is not super wise, and he's always trying to joke and things like that. And he's going to even play this up like he meant to kill Todrick, which is the craziest part. Instantly, the looting stops in shock as Theon commands Fish Whiskers Boltley to silence Todrick, and they swiftly slit his throat and strip him before he's even dead. It's crazy that they're now even looting their own person. They just don't care. As Theon continues to try to assert control, making it clear he won't tolerate drunkenness or fights over plunder. Now, I want you guys to remember this. Theon, who is a great archer, even he missed his target here because of this drunk basically moving randomly. When Theon remembers the time Bran was in trouble and having, saved his life, remember this moment because it's really relevant. As he picks up Benfred's fallen banner, noticing a rabbit skin tied to it, something he had meant to ask about before the encounter turned violent. Despite this clear victory, Theon feels no satisfaction. He recalls feeling elated after the Whispering Wood, but this fight felt like a slaughter, not glory. In the Whispering Wood, Theon was going into a battle against the odds with, a brother in Robb Stark. Theon thinks of Robb as a brother. It felt like a just cause. It felt like all of these different things, taking down the Lannisters and their greediness. Here, it doesn't have the same ring to it, albeit war is bad always. The Tallheart men had arrived unprepared, joking and singing, with banners flying and rabbit skins on their lances. We had heard about this group back earlier on in Bran's storyline, and we see how they meet their end. Theon had, in a lot of ways, copied Robb's strategy. Theon had hidden archers and ambushed them with arrows, and his men finished the survivors in brutal, close combat. It reminds you a lot of the Whispering Wood. There's a lot of ways that George tries to reflect how Theon has grown a lot with Robb and how he looks at military combat, especially also being in a lot of the scouting parties for Brynden the Blackfish. He's taken a lot of that to heart and is using that in his own tactics. He had intended to question Benfred Tallheart, but now it was too late. Returning to the beach, Theon sees Benfred's lifeless body being pulled from the sea and his longships outlined against the sky. The fishing village nearby had also been destroyed, as only ashes remained. Most of the men were killed, except a few spared to spread word to Torrens Square. The young and attractive women were taken as salt wives. The old and unattractive ones were, let's just say, sexually assaulted and killed or enslaved if deemed useful. And that's another part of it that's dragging on Theon's mind. Theon knows this is something the Starks would never do. Robb himself would take captives, of course, but he wouldn't do what they're doing right now. And that's all these parts that Theon knows in his mind. He's been taught all of these things by characters like Ned Stark, and he's going against everything that he's ever learned. And that's the problem. Theon is not this person that he's trying to be. It's what makes some of the conversation between Maester Luwin and Theon so great, is this whole concept. Whereas all the other characters we had in book one have really figured out their identities. Characters like Jon Snow, Daenerys, Arya, all those characters. This is really what Theon's main arc is. Theon is now having that arc in book two, his identity, something that's going to be a main stage, like, big point for him. It's going to go into book five. What is the main purpose of book five for Theon is about who he is. Is he Reek? Is he Theon? Is he a Stark? Is he a Greyjoy? Who is Theon? As we get into page 407, Theon had carefully planned the raid on the fishing village, landing before dawn and leading the charge himself, axe in hand. Despite the victory, he feels no pride or satisfaction, only bitterness and unease. For one, he hates the role that he's been given, what he's having to do, and also, again, like I've talked about, he's betraying himself. He resents his sister Asha, who is sailing north to claim her own glory and likely a castle, while his deeds will be hidden under the guise of random sea raids. And we know this to be true. We just had this whole thing with Bran, and we even hear about Theon's raids. We know that that is exactly what's going to happen. Whereas Asha will be viewed as a bigger threat. Victarion will be viewed as the biggest threat because of him taking Moat Cailin. Theon is really just a little note in this whole Greyjoy rebellion. The Iron Islands kept the larger invasion plans secret, so the North won't realize the true threat until it's too late. And Theon is right. The North, and again, if you're the North, why would you expect an attack by the Ironborn? It is suicidal. All the things about how we talked about in Theon 1 and 2 all come into play here. Why would you attack the North? You can't hold it. It is suicidal to attack the North outside of just raiding things and taking things and then leaving. And so the North isn't necessarily stupid for not seeing this coming, and it's one of those things of just chalk it up to Balon Greyjoy is a moron. Theon fears being forgotten in the songs and glory that will go to Asha unless he prevents it. Now, I will say, if you're Theon, yes, Asha will get more accolade for taking Deepwood Motte, but she's taking Deepwood Motte. Like, it's not anything crazy. Like, the general histories won't really remember Asha. They might remember Victarion taking Moat Cailin being a major annoyance to the North, but Asha, not so much in terms of where she's currently headed. Dagmar Cleftjaw, legendary warrior with a grotesquely scarred face, stands aboard the Foam Drinker, guarding the ships. Theon had purposely placed him there to give him a lesser role, to try and give Theon more credit, I guess, albeit this really wasn't that big of a victory, and that's kind of what Theon is seeing. As Dagmar doesn't really mind the task and laughs it off, Dagmar knows that regardless of if he's in the fight, if he's not in the fight, there's no glory really to be had here. Dagmar notes the men sang bravely before they died. Theon dismisses it, saying their singing was more useful than their lances. The only Ironborn casualty was Todrick, whom Theon himself had executed for drunkenness and fighting over loot. So again, the Ironborn don't even lose a guy. It just tells you the competition they're going up against. Dagmar shows no concern, remarking that some men are born to die. It's war. You're going to chalk it up to war. Even though Theon, what he just did is he killed his own soldier, a terrible thing, it just gets laughed off because that's just the Ironborn culture. Despite his appearance, Dagmar's frequent, hideous smile brings back fond memories for Theon. Dagmar, in a way, was more of a father than Balon had ever been. Theon recalls receiving more praise and encouragement from Dagmar in his youth than from either of his two fathers, Balon or Ned. And that's the issue. Theon is so much craving to be recognized, to be loved, to be cared about. And he never really found that in anyone outside of, say, Robb. And even Robb kind of started to become more of Ned Stark as he grew up. He even remembers how Robb had given him a scolding from saving Bran from the wildlings. Again, it's crazy though, because here's the thing. We just saw how easy it is for something to go wrong shooting an arrow at a target you don't want to die, right? We just saw it. We just saw Theon accidentally kill someone. Theon could very easily kill Bran. It's something Theon doesn't really process because he's not the smartest guy in the world, and Robb had a legit concern. So, yeah, but let's move on to page 408. Theon tells Dagmar they need to talk. Though not truly family, Theon had always called Dagmar uncle. On Dagmar's ship, Foam Drinker, titles mean little. Every captain is king on his own deck, which is a very interesting concept, right? Because you don't see this anywhere else. It's interesting because it shows how much focus and attention goes to the sea, goes to the ships, all these different things. What I'm really curious about, though, is how does this law hold up? Let's say Balon Greyjoy came on to Dagmar Cleftjaw's boat, and let's say Balon insulted Dagmar somehow. If Dagmar then imprisons Balon, well, again, Dagmar's the captain on the ship. Does that just mean people are just like, oh well, Dagmar was the captain of the ship, I guess we just don't rescue Balon? It's a weird concept to try and internalize. Theon boards and joins Dagmar in the cabin where the old warrior offers ale. Theon declines and brings up the issue of lacking enough horses. Dagmar, like most Ironborn, did not put any real focus on horses. What do they need horses for? Their best fighting is in the sea, which is crazy to think given the fact that they're trying to conquer the landmass with the most land and they don't give a shit about horses. All I've got to say, but Theon, being somebody that's grown up around horses now with the Starks, he understands their importance, especially with Robb's, campaign with his horse, now being into the west and also at the Whispering Wood where they were very important. Theon hints that he has a different plan, though, something more ambitious than raiding the coast. He knows he needs Dagmar's support. Without it, the men won't follow him, and Aeron Damphair will never be swayed. Theon seeing this as he can't really get Aeron's approval. He's never going to be what Aeron wants him to be, so why not go to Dagmar, somebody that was more family to him than anyone? And you look at Dagmar's reputation, he's a fearsome warrior, all of these different things. Theon is going to try and gain his trust and or use him. Dagmar reminds him that Lord Balon's orders were only to harry the coast, but Theon watches for signs of interest and thinks he sees it. Even Dagmar, again, everything about the Ironborn is they want to do as much glory, they want to do actual good fighting and all this kind of stuff. Dagmar is a classic Ironborn as well, and so Theon knows how to manipulate Dagmar. Theon flatters Dagmar, calling him the most skilled warrior in the Iron Islands, and Dagmar humbly notes that maybe in his day, when he was in his prime, but now he's grown old, and other warriors like Andric and Black Lauren and Carl the Maid now claim that title. Theon counters that while Andric may be strong, none inspire fear like Dagmar. Dagmar agrees, pleased by the recognition, of course, right? Theon is kind of buttering up Dagmar, saying he's the most feared man of the Iron Islands and all of that stuff. But this is when we really start to get into more of Theon's plan. Theon presses further, saying a man like Dagmar shouldn't be wasted on petty raids, implying he's worthy of a greater role in something far more meaningful. Yeah, it's kind of weird. They're using the person who has a lot of reputation, who is still a skilled warrior at this point of his life, a great advisor, and you're having him babysit Theon, and Theon's not even been given a role to be babysitted on, right? It's just weird. It's a waste of resources. That's what Theon's trying to imply, and that gets us to page 409. Dagmar laughs, suggesting it's not he who feels wasted, which he's totally correct. Theon is the person that feels wasted, that wants glory and all these things more than any of them. More than anything. And again, Dagmar's the one that was really raising Theon. He's known him in his formidable years, especially early on before he was taken. He knows how Theon is. Theon admits he feels he deserves command equal to his sister Asha's, though he knows how petulant that sounds. He knows how he's coming off as like a kid. He's complaining, but if you're Theon, you've actually been in a real battle against Jaime Lannister in the Whispering Wood. and you're the male claim, and you're the male heir, again, everything Theon's been taught, Theon should have what Asha's mission is, or even Victarion's mission, but Balon doesn't trust Theon. Like, none of the Ironborn do, because they see the issue. Theon grew up a Stark. Dagmar explains Balon simply trusts Asha more. After Theon was taken by the Starks, Asha became his father's solace and never failed him. And again, you can see Balon's side of this, right? We even know Theon is not the man he's trying to be, and Asha is. Asha is an Ironborn through and through, and that's the whole issue that Theon runs into. Theon insists he also never failed. The Starks trusted him and he fought valiantly at the Whispering Wood, nearly reaching Jaime Lannister before another man died in his place, which is a good thing because if Theon had run into Jaime, Theon easily would have been killed. But Theon did fight valiantly. He is a warrior. He's shown that he is very capable. And Dagmar affirms that he knows Theon is brave, but he questions whether Lord Balon does. Dagmar knows Theon much more than Balon ever does, but can Theon be trusted? And that's the whole thing. Theon bitter denies being a Stark and declares he must prove himself as a true Greyjoy to become his father's heir. And how is he going to do that just raiding the coast? That's never going to happen. And Balon is somebody that is not the youngest guy. He's somebody that's not very healthy looking, and you're in the Ironborn culture. Somebody might kill you off at some point. Theon needs a chance to prove himself, and he's not being given that chance. Dagmar gives some very wise advice, something you don't see much from the Ironborn, as he advises patience, saying more wars will come, but Theon is determined to do something bold now. And Theon is right to look at the situation and go, this is my time, this is where I can make my mark, because more wars to come, what are you expecting, right? Once the War of the Five Kings is done, who knows what's going to happen, right? Who knows if the Ironborn are even going to succeed? If they don't, Balon could die, right? Like, say the Ironborn just keep doing their thing, eventually Tywin or Stannis, whoever is winning, is going to look at them and go, it's time to stop. You betrayed us once. You've had the Greyjoy Rebellion once, and now we let you kind of keep your title, and now it's time for you to go. So Theon, I think, is thinking about all of those different things. Theon offers to give Aeron 6 ships to handle the coastal raids, while he and Dagmar undertake a more daring task. He insists only Dagmar can help him accomplish it. No priest could manage what he has in mind. Again, he's building it up. He's playing with Dagmar, right? He's manipulating Dagmar because he's playing on this idea that nobody would be bold enough to do what I want to do, and hinting at it and giving Dagmar little sprinkles of what Theon's plan is. Dagmar, though, is intrigued and asked to hear the plan. Theon appeals to his pride, saying if Asha can take a castle, so can he, with fewer men but more courage and cunning, something that people will remember about. When Dagmar raises Balon's order, Theon claims his father will be more grateful once he delivers him a kingdom. Theon is trying to give Balon the North, whereas Asha is just taking a castle that doesn't really matter all that much in Deepwood Mott. You have Victarion, who is doing a great thing by cutting off Robb, but Theon wants to go for the heart of the North. And this very much entices Dagmar even further, because Theon is continuing to sprinkle and dance around his plan. Theon ends with promising a deed worthy of 1,000-year song, knowing Dagmar, who already has a song to his name, can't resist such glory. Dagmar is in his older age. He's now looking at the time where, how will people remember him? The same thing we talk about with George R. R. Martin in his life right now, the things he's contemplating, watching, colleagues and friends pass away, unfortunately. He's thinking about his legacy. The same is still true with someone like Dagmar Cleftjaw as well. And it's something that George writes a lot about. What do we leave behind? As we get into the last page of the chapter. After a long pause, he asks what his role would be in Theon's plan, signaling that he's been won over. He's asking, what is my role? He's asking what he's going to do. The curiosity has eaten at him. Theon assigns him the key task of leading the bulk of their forces to besiege Torrhen's Square, striking fear into the north. Again, especially with somebody like Dagmar who has this reputation, it's going to draw eyes to him, not to Theon, the real threat, the real person trying to take Winterfell. With Helm and Tallheart and his best men gone south, and And Benfred now dead, only Leopold remains to defend the castle. Theon instructs Dagmar to approach openly and loudly, encouraging the defenders to lock the gate. Theon doesn't want a straight-on-straight confrontation. He wants to bait other forces to come help. That's the key. Take forces to move here while Theon strikes somewhere else. It's something we see Robb do. Like, again, a lot of what Theon's tactics, they are literally copy-paste tactics for people like Robb and Brynden. You can see the influence that those characters have directly on Theon. It's just so funny that so many of Theon's actions are really motivated by characters like Ned, characters like Robb, characters like Blackfish, very influential people in Theon's life, and even Dagmar to an extent as well, trying to get this glory and songs and things of that nature. When Dagmar asks about its defenses, Theon remarks that Torrhen's Square is a stronghold with 30-foot stone walls and towers, not easily taken without siege equipment. And Dagmar straight up openly detests this. They can't take it without having siege equipment, and that's not something the Ironborn do. They do not siege people. They do not dig in and wait for them to be starved out. That's not the Ironborn way. And Theon explains they won't need to actually take the castle. The siege is but bait. He expects Leopold to call for help from Sir Roderick Cassel at Winterfell, and Theon anticipates that Sir Roderick, out of duty, will ride to Tallheart's aid with most of Winterfell's garrison, which he is totally correct. And the thing that's so detrimental and why Theon wanted to keep Benfred is because if he had Benfred, he would have been able to tell how many defenders are going to be at Torrhen's Square or at Winterfell. He's going to know those things. So Theon is now playing a war of kind of deceit, right? And Dagmar warns that Sir Roderick is experienced and any force he leads would be stronger than theirs. Dagmar knows he's going to be outnumbered at this siege, and this will probably cost him his life. Theon smiles, revealing the real target isn't Torrhen's Square. His true aim is to seize Winterfell once his defenders are drawn away. And I want to talk about this on my main channel, so if you're watching this and you want to hear about how I think about Theon taking Winterfell, this is a brilliant plan. Theon knows everything about Winterfell, really. He's grown up there. This is a perfect plan. And if you are the Greyjoys, if you're actually trying to hold the North, you have to take Winterfell. It's the key to the North. And so Theon taking Winterfell is a great plan. It makes so much sense given what Balon's plan is. Unfortunately, he gets no help. Right? There should be soldiers being sent to garrison Winterfell. Winterfell has stocks of food. They could last a long time, right? If Theon had been given proper reinforcements, the proper praise that he should have gotten, he could have easily have held Winterfell for a long time. And that's what's so frustrating to me is that, Balon Greyjoy is such a moron that he does not realize to actually take the North and say you're the king of the North over this whole people, you have to actually take it. You have to do some sort of land battle. You can't just take things close to the sea. You have to go all the way across the country to get to the eastern side of the North. Is your plan to just, we're going to take some of the stuff in the West and then we're just going to say we rule the North? Balon's just a moron. You guys know that, but thank you guys all for watching, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.